Yodeling.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming here today. I'm honored to have Marla sitting here next to me. We're good friends and good pals. That she comes by the gallery and we talk often. Sometimes, sometimes just about the things in the world, art, and just really funny things. It's always a fun, playful conversation. I feel, but there is always a certain kind of amount of deep thoughts involved as well. I think there's that really interesting dichotomy, and that's really how I see your work as well. I think it invites you in with a very whimsical, playful way, but then after a couple of moments, it kind of evolves into this very thoughtful, invites this thoughtful thinking. So it's really wonderful work that is not only working on one surface. It's very much three-dimensional. But I want to talk to you about that part before you start your demonstration because you know much more about the technical things and there's a lot of experimenting going into your work and it's better for you to explain that on hand. And I want to kind of talk to you about some of your intentions behind your work. So let's start right in, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
So remind me, it was 32, 33 years ago when you first showed your work at the New Texas Talent exhibition. For those of you who don't know, New Texas Talent is the emerging artist exhibition that we have every year. Actually, the announcement of the juror and the submission phase is coming up. So if you know anybody, reach out to them who wants to submit, and it's a great opportunity for artists to show their work and just get your eyes on your work, and it's really a wonderful opportunity for emerging artists or even older artists who have been doing it for a while and now want to show their work. So it's a great opportunity all around. Anyways, to you showed your work here and then kind of conceived back then, discovered your work, found it beautiful, and decided to show it in the gallery here. Um, are you excited for this year's New Texas Sound exhibition? And
Oh, I'm always excited for the New Texas Talent.
you are.
Yeah, there are a lot of people. You don't want to get them back down when there's so many people coming to see the art, but the art is so fantastic. And I've taught art history and drawing in um, the Dallas now college area. It was Dallas Community College at the time. And a lot of the students that we had that I knew through the college experience would often be in the show, and some of them show with you guys right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. So I'm always excited to see
Yeah.
their stuff.
So being a veteran that you are now with the New Texas Sound, do you have any recommendations for emerging artists, what they can do and how to prepare for that?
I was just tell me your name again. Francesca. She was going, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And I said, well, I said that too. And I said, I mean, I was older, and they said you take talent, and it doesn't say young Texas talent, and so I did it. So I just say, put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, looking back, did even then, you were already a little bit further progressed with your work, but did you feel like your work from there evolved even more, or did you already kind of find your voice as an artist when you submitted at New Texas Talent back then?
Well, I was pretty confident about my work. I'd been working on it in my studio for 2 years, and nobody had seen it. And then I wanted to enter the New Texas Talent, but I thought it wasn't. I thought it was an age thing, and then it wasn't. And um, when they asked me if I wanted to have an exhibit, I said, yeah. And I said, well, do you want it to be in a group show, or do you want to show with someone else, or do you want a solo show? I said, a solo show. So I was pretty confident about getting that stuff out of my tiny studio and onto some walls. Yeah, it was. It's fun. Yeah. That was my first exhibit.
Yeah.
Ever.
And you worked in play back then already, right?
That was all I worked in.
Yeah. When did you become? When did that become your medium? When did you start doing play pieces or?
Well, it was in South Dakota, in a hunt farm. I spent a lot of time making mud pies. It was my favorite pastime, other than putting clothes on kittens. Um, I would even go down to the hen house and sneak in an egg or two and mix it in there for the consistency. So I was already experimenting with it and decorating it with stuff around the yard, like um, twigs and leaves and seeds and anything like that.
Similar to what you do right now, too, right?
Exactly. um, that was it. And then I really started like on a wheel or with a piece of real clay. I was in undergraduate school. And the person who was teaching ceramics was also teaching some drawing and stuff. And uh, I was watching him throw on the wheel, and he says, "You want to try it?" And I said, "Sure." So he got a little bit of clay and he centered it for me. And I'd been watching him, and he said, "Go ahead." And boom, I made a pot. And he said, "You've done this before." And I said, "No." But it was just so much fun and so flexible and just I think it's forgiving because if you don't like the shape, you can roll it back up in a ball and try again. So it's a fun thing to do.
So I was saying in the introduction that you work almost as kind of a whimsical, almost they're almost characters in a way. Yeah, they are. So where does that narrative come from, like that storytelling instinct?
Well, um, I've always personified inanimate objects. I have a knife named Norman, a kitchen knife, a door the doily, and other objects that are, I just give them names, I don't know why. But when I'm making a piece, I start with a form or a shape or whatever, and as I'm building with it and adding to it, or adding other pieces with it, all of a sudden it turns into a party planner or a art critic, it's like in this little bow tie on it, and it's a bottle shape, but you just add a little bit, and it looks like coming in a suit to look at your art. So it makes itself, and other things are personified, but they sort of direct themselves into that, because they have a tendency to do that.
So you taught drawing for a long time at Dallas College, and how do you think that influenced your work? Because you do sometimes work with graphite as well. For me, that is an influence. So maybe you can speak more to that.
Oh, that's probably the thing that influenced. No, it's my favorite thing to teach was figure drawing, but I don't do figures. I do non-objective objects, basically, that I put together and then personify them into la professora or something. Um, but what was the question?
About drawing.
Oh, drawing.
Drawing,
Yeah.
going into your work.
I'm sorry. That's where my storytelling comes from. I just saw things direction.
Yeah, well, it's great.
The thing that I get out of drawing was I finally just sort of became more open to using other things than just clay with glaze on it. I'm like, well, I can't get this. And I loved how the clay looked before I fired it the first time. It was this sort of graphite gray. And then I fired it and it's pure white. And I'm going, then I'd have to put something on it. And I kept trying to find something that resembled what it looked like before I fired it, and I went, graphite. So there's graphite that's in powder form, and you can obviously on a pencil, but it's also in a liquid form, and you can take the powdered graphite and put a little lighter fluid in it. It does the same thing as the liquid stuff that you can buy at like Home Depot or something. And then you just smear it on there. But then sometimes after I smear that surface on there, then I come back and draw on it with a pencil. Or I use color pencil or spray paint or whatever. I'm thinking about my new stuff that I'm working on. If I want that really kind of chalky white in it, I'm going to use liquid paper. You know, if you get it on you, you can't get it off, so it should stay on the art.
Well, we get some insights on what's coming, or we are getting to see soon. That's really
But
interesting.
I think it's the
Yeah,
material
yeah, just that materiality of
and being
using
more
different.
flexible about what surfaces
Right.
I can use.
Yeah. Well, your pieces, I was saying that they always feel like characters, or there's a story behind it. Um, do they begin with a specific memory, or do they just the medium kind of influence that, or like you have an emotion that you want to capture in that, or does it happen retroactively, where you say, oh, this kind of looks like an art critic, and then you
Yeah,
put that
I
you
have this
involve.
works, what I am attracted to is a shape or a form. These pieces here were the and shadows that are created by pieces and forms. These are, you can, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm,
Maybe
I'm,
speaking to the microphone.
I can't hear. I can. Is that better? Okay. Okay. Um, what were we talking about? No, I'm just kidding. I start out with a form or a shape or a shadow or something flat like a shadow of these plants. These I call them snake plants. I'm sure they have some biological or some other botanical. That's the word name of it. So I just started making, I'll see a shadow or a shape or a flat thing, and I say, I'm going to make that three dimensional. And I'm going to do it with clay. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. So I'm all excited about how to figure out how to do it. And then I'm not going to put it on a pedestal. I'm going to see how I can hang it from the ceiling or put it on the wall. And
Yeah.
that's where I start with. And then they start to become something. I start to, when you it takes 3 months for me to, let's say, make 13 pieces or something for a show because it all has to dry. You know, you're working on 4 or 5 at a time. And then you set them down and go, oh, they are good together. And so then you start working with that. And it's kind of collage like or a game of putting peanuts under cups and moving them around and seeing what happens. So it's kind of a fun game to play. So they get their maybe more thoughtfulness later on.
That's interesting because they feel so, comprehensive in their thought, and like having the shape really much, very much influence that final, thought or interpretation is quite interesting. But there's for me at least, there's a certain kind of common theme of, there's word plays on words, and like there's a lot of kind of literary influences. So is there some like a deeper meaning in that as well, or are you just a wordsmith?
Well,
Like that?
I like weird words, you know, and so I have things where I write titles down all the time where I combine them and they're on the wall, and I have a notebook full of them and circle them if I use them, so I don't use them 3 or 4 times the titles and the words. And sometimes I'll be working with you use a lot of newspaper when you're working with clay, and you set it on top of the newspaper and you're building it or sanding or whatever. And then I see myself read something and I go, oh, that's a good title, and I walk over and write down the title. So I like how words do that sort of thing. And I also like different fonts and styles of writing. I mean, how they look.
Yes.
And a lot of the writing in my things, like this one around the corner, I don't mean anything. They just look like 8, 6, and 9 look really good together, or something.
Yeah.
And so I use it as a shape or a form.
So almost drawing with uh, figures or
Yeah,
letters.
yeah. The writing isn't really on there for you to read them.
Yeah. Even though there's some really great writing on those on your pieces. I look at this piece right here. You can look at it later, everybody. But it says, "How does your garden?" And then it shows a leaf. But then how does your
Well,
garden
that
do? How
one.
does your garden grow?
Well, that's that.
It leaves interpretation.
That's a nursery rhyme, isn't it? Very merry, quite contrary. How does your garden grow?
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that. I
yeah.
need to learn that.
I should have got you a book of nursery rhymes for the baby.
Yes.
You do know he's a new father as of this week, right? Little baby boy named Wesley. Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. So they're more shapes, like
More shapes, and then you,
Mhm.
you put in meaning and shape of drawings on into.
Well, this one started around the corner that I'm talking about. And maybe we'll see it in a little bit. It started about making one. It turned into one of those things like a chain letter. Like you used to get chain letters or stuff. And so I just started finding things that had writing in them or looked like postage stamps or things that whatever, and put put those different things kind of hidden in there. If it's a secret letter or something, but it didn't start out that way. It became that.
Yeah. It grows as you.
Mm-hmm. And
so how
it,
does
go ahead.
how does your life how does that grow your work? So your life experiences, like how do you how do you develop that? How did you develop that skill of being able to just start with a simple shape and then retroactively weave all this beauty and meaning into that?
I was just born that way. I don't know. I don't have something that started it. I guess that's who I am. I mean, my dad's real funny, and I have a lot of uncles that tell stories all the time. And you go, tell that story again. I heard it at the family reunion 6 years ago. I want to hear it again. But a lot of storytellers and stuff. But things are just kind of funny and humorous to me. I was going to tell you about the writing. I like how Gordon, he's my friend, raise your hand right there. Right here. And I made him write a bunch of stories down because he had stories. He had lots of sketchbooks and stuff because I like his handwriting. So I would use his handwriting, take it to school, and keep blowing it up and blowing it up on Xerox machine when the secretary wasn't watching because we were supposed to be doing that, but the school until it got really big, so then using his script handwriting. So it was just how it looked. It didn't, and I just used portions of it. So.
Well, that's so interesting. I think it's time for you to start talking about your actual work yourself and um, not have to answer my questions.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming. You remind me of the title of a piece that I made, which was called Walk Between the Raindrops. And that's what you did to get here today. So thank you for coming on such a rainy day. And I don't know. Um, I would have to talk about individual things. This is my most recent piece right here. And um, that came from a photograph that somebody had taken, and I tore out part of it and cut it apart, and then it just sort of looked like something that was rising. I had all kinds of titles for it. I don't even like this title. Most titles come to me as I'm making them. So finally it got to like, you gotta have a title, you gotta turn it in. So I put near and far, but I might change its name. Do you have to have a lawyer to do that? I don't know. A judge? Okay. Yeah. Um, like these little pieces right here. I have a big one. I've got, this is like a little 8 by 8 piece. puzzle right now, and it has these little stickies on the back. So you put them on the wall, but I have bigger ones. I've made some that somebody wanted one that went all across above his headboard on his bed, so I made a bunch of them. And they came from like an ad that came into my house, and it was a puzzle piece, a jigsaw puzzle piece about this big. And so I just made a lot of those puzzle pieces, and I changed where the holes and the little knobs and stuff were on them, so they weren't all just the same, and decorated them and put them in walls and stuff. But I started noticing fell off of that, but when I cut it out, were actually more interesting. And so I started saving them. And I have one of these where the pieces are so tiny, the piece is only, you know, so it's a little tiny image. So I could put it in, I guess, part of my portfolio that I carry in my purse. It's so tiny. But I'm just shape is my thing, the size of it. But I don't know where to begin if I'm not standing in front of something that I'm working
Well,
on. These?
your work does have a lot of experimenting with different glazes and textures on them, right? So I think maybe starting to talk about that is really interesting.
Well, I get a lot of textures that I don't make my own glazes. I could go and buy glazes, and these are low fire. And so all my time is not mixing up clay and mixing glazes, it's making the art and stuff. And so this is really an underglaze, which you're supposed to put on before you put a glaze on it, right? And then years ago, I used to go, oh, just because it said I had to put the underglaze and the glaze on top of it, what if I put the glaze on and put the underglaze over the glaze? And man, did I get some nice textures from that. Oh, yeah, that was the part that bubbled up. Yeah, and you own one of my pieces that I drew on it and drew all the shapes, and then I put all the stuff in there, and then I fired it, and everywhere I'd drawn in graphite was supposed to disappear because it had before when I used it, and it made this beautiful ochre or no terracotta color of orange around everything, and terracotta and turquoise look very nice together. Yeah. Um, so I like experimenting. And I feel like sometimes I'm working like a collage where I'm moving pieces around and laying them on top of each other and having them overlap in a long row or something. And so one time I just decided, I guess several shows back, I'm going to make a collage and it's all going to kind of resemble a paper collage. And so it's really flat. But and they were this big and this long, and then I started out with a big panel, and then I had to figure out how to make holes in this one so I could put spikes in the back and poke it through there so it looked like it was glued. The first thing I put on the wall. That was so much fun, trying to figure out how to fool people what it is. And I never wanted to fool people that a lot of people think they're made out of metal, especially the black ones and the ones with graphite rubbed on them and stuff. And they were arguing with Kenneth, the director at the time, and he goes, I kept telling them they weren't made of metal, they weren't steel, or they weren't whatever. And he said, finally, I said to him, call them what you want, just don't drop them. Right? And I think it's these pieces, these knot pieces right here. It's fun to make them because you have to think of about 50 different kinds of knots or where you're going to put the knot and whatever. And then they have to draw and you can't break them. You have to do that when they're still wet, like certain, you can tie them without them breaking apart. And then when they dry, you have to come in the back and decide on the wall where you want them to hang. So then you put a long spike. This is the white nail. You make a little hole and you put it in there. Maybe real quick. And then you spend a lot of time using something to take the plastic part off of push chairs. That is science, I mean, and they go everywhere, whatever. and then you drill a little hole, put the push pin here, so when you hang it on the wall, it doesn't do this. Mm-hmm. So that's hard. Now, my dad could fix anything. When I came home from college, I'd always take everything I had and put it in the car I was driving that was broken, and he would fix it for me while I was there over spring break or something. And he had a shop, and I went out there and everything. So I think I learned to like tinker like this with things and figure things out because of him. Yeah. Well, I don't know where to go from here. I like to make things that are not useful. You see, this is a pot, basically, but I put a lid on it so you can't put anything in it, right? I close off the top of it. Or I make a vase and then I make it so it's not utilitarian. And it's, I don't know, I used to make pots and throw them, and I still have them and use them in my kitchen and stuff, but it's just like, got to go somewhere else. And I've made things that are as tall as I am, and they're like, um, you know those add a bead necklaces that you used to have? Well, you get a big long pole with a base on it, and then you start with the first one, and then you make it. You have to make that one before you can add another one to it, because you have to make it, and then you have to flip it over this thing and come down and tap it on the one that's been fired, not finished, but fired, so it fits tight, so you can't see between them, and then you fire it. Then you have to go, what should I use for the next thing, And where I get all of these, just I keep using. You see how thick these are? That's how I get a bunch of clay in a big brick, like 20 pounds, and I shave it. I roll it through this slab roller, and it makes them this thick. And then I put them in molds, and those molds come from the thrift store or my kitchen, or I also gathered a whole bunch of big wooden ones years ago from a place that was getting rid of all of these molds that were used for making nuclear submarines. And some of them were as big as a Volkswagen, a Beetle, and some of them were just this big. I went and collected this. I went 2 trips with a friend that's in a truck, and picked up so we could pick it up and bring them back and get as many as I wanted. But back then I was thinking vessels, so I was getting things that were all vessel shaped. So I might start with that mold, and then I'll cut it all up and put it back together in a new way, and you never knew that it was intended to be a pot or a vase or whatever because it's changed. But it's hand building, slab and then hand building, and finding weird things that go, ooh, that would make a great mold. And that's kind of where objects and three-dimensional objects fit into me starting
Yeah.
something.
So you also, because you find molds and those influence the work, but you also use like twigs and stones and leaves and all kinds of things.
I yeah, I may have a bunch of ceramic things that are black and objects in different shapes and sizes, and I go, oh, that twig out in the yard, and the body, bring it in here and spray paint it black, put it on the wall right there, with it. So there are things like that in there. One time it was like I think a coat hanger or something in a weird shape, and then I went out and found these leaves in my yard that were already dry, and I glued them to it and then sprayed them white for one where it was called Big White Lie, or whatever, and then I did Little White Lie, version of it, and so if it works, I use it, and I collect those things, and I have a section of wall in my studio where I just push them into the wall, the things I find on a walk or something. I go, that might come in handy. I've even used a part of a Brazilian one. It's like, ooh, look at that! I fell off of there. That's going to be good, and it's in one of the pieces. In fact, it's in the Big White Lie. Yeah, so it opened it up that it's sort of mixed media, and I'm always collecting things that I might eventually use or not. But these pieces right here were built, the base for them, the white bases that I made from a mold, that is about this shape, it looks like this, had never been fired. They were called greenware, and you could just touch them the wrong way and they would break. But I managed to keep them for 15 years, and I went, oh, look what I just found. That's under this, you know, foam stuff that I'd put over the top of them to keep them from breaking. I went, I don't have to make anything. I can just use these. And then it teamed up with the thing I would want was had pinned to the wall this photograph, and I went perfect. So sometimes things just meet and do that.
This is a new kind of body of work that you've been doing, these panels, right?
No, some of these panels over here are from 2019,
Okay.
and then I have, yeah, that was built by a friend. Friend Wendy built it for me, and so one side is deeper and the other side it's not. But it's just some wood put together so that you can push the clay into it. And but everything has to be hollow. Nothing is. It has to be hollow, or you can't fire it because it will explode. Yeah, I did that once. I learned it the hard way. Oh, I forgot to put the hole in it. Because there's no opening in this, but somewhere I have to sneak a little pinhole in it so when that air inside of it gets hot up to 14,000 degrees. I mean, it's hot, and you don't have a way for the air to come out. Just a pinhole. No, no, that was a small piece, and I went, oh, why did I do that? Oh yeah, I forgot to put the hole in. But I like to kind of hide them somewhere if they have to show. Plus, the other thing you have to think about is if you're going to put a glaze on it, you have to figure out how you're going to do that because you have to put them on little spikes, these little things, because otherwise they stick to the shelf in the kiln, and then you could get put the kiln shelf and a piece on the wall, but it doesn't work that way. So you have to figure out all this stuff, and it's a fun task to do. You do a lot of thinking, so there's thoughtful things in there, but nothing prolific. I mean, like I don't feel good today, so I'm going to make a sad piece. No, I don't do that. Or I'm really happy. I'm mostly happy. Except I'm mad at my television right now. It's not streaming correctly. I'm waiting till I'm not so angry at Spectrum before I call them because I probably won't get what I need out of them if I call them and I'm upset. It's been going on for 4 days. Uh, anyway, do you guys have some questions for me? Yes. You take a thin, bigger slab like this, a slab of wet clay, and you push it into a shape like this that has edges on it. And so if you turn this over, it's hollow underneath. It's just like you built it with strips of a piece of wood on top, only you did it with clay. So the edges, everything's clay, but um, this was made from light fixture. Light fixtures are great. That they used to put over light bulbs and stuff. They're great for. I go to thrift stores and go through where they have parts that they don't have lamps and stuff, but they just have pieces of them, and I get a lot of great shapes from where you used to cover up the ugly light bulbs with them. Yeah. Oh, and this is what I'm doing next. I've decided to move away from all of this type, this that's a lot to have to do, make that perfect. I'm going into this. I'm going to start throwing paint on them. Yeah. And it started because I had these pieces that I had nothing done with. And then I had 2 surgeries back to back. So for 4 years, I didn't do much in my studio, and all the glazes or dried up or they didn't work or they cracked off or whatever. And I thought, I'll just use them all up by being an abstract sort of artist. I mean, abstract expression, Pollock or somebody. But that isn't done. I just did that in part at once to see what happened. And when you touch one color over another, it makes a third color and all that sort of stuff. And so I may add some more to this. I've been working on it, but I have a table full of things that didn't get put in a place and have been fired and they're nice and white like this. A great service. It's a relief just to stand back and throw paint at something rather than putting all these little lines of tape on there and painting them and then coming back and filling them in with crap on it and stuff. But that's where I'm going to try to head for a while and see what happens. Anybody else? Yes. Mm-hmm. It's an earthenware, and I get it at a supply company that sells all kinds of. It's called Trinity Ceramics here in Dallas, but they have them all over the place where you get already pre-made clay, and you can get earthenware like terracotta or brown earthenware, and this one happened to be a white. It fires white, and it's gray, but this turns white when it's fired. But they give it strange names like, oh, well, no, I don't know exactly where they dig up this clay, but usually when they dig up clay, they add more things to it, like sand, really tiny sand for grog, and they do this. But some of these people get it in powder form and they mix it like a big factory, and then they produce it and you buy it. And you can get porcelain like that. You can get black bodied clay. You can get all kinds of things. Hmm. Yes. No, I'm sorry. I got divorced about, I don't know, close to 20 years ago. And one of my friends came up and they said, I can't wait to see how this divorce is going to affect your art. And I looked at her like, are you crazy? I thought I never even would have thought of that, right? And I wasn't putting my angst in my artwork. I don't do that. Some people do, and it makes for good art for them. But I was just like, how odd, how weird to do that. I don't, it seems really weird. And so, no, I don't. No, maybe the only thing in there is a little bit of my humor and that kind of stuff, and playfulness and stuff, but not other things. No, thank you. Well, oh, yeah. Oh, I tried that and you can never make it. I mean, yeah, you can draw it, but you can't make it. So I just start with the form and then it informs the next piece and the next piece and if they're going to fit together. And then I draw them all after they're done and I label them where I put every piece of glaze because sometimes people break a piece that goes with a bunch of other pieces. And so I was showing Frederick my book where I have all of this, and I used this glaze, and I put this on top, and then I fired it, and then I added this, and then I didn't like it, so so I wrote all it down. It's like a formula, like you have to do in photography if you're creating your own work and putting it through the baths of acid and that sort of stuff. You have to remember how many minutes you left it in there and record all of that. And I used to think, I don't want to be a photographer. I don't want to write all that stuff down. And I write more things down than any photographer ever did. But I do draw the pieces. Yeah, but afterwards. Yes. In fact, see the purple one? I reproduced it 3 times because the purple glaze kept coming off. It was one of those glazes that froze, and I kept trying to make it work. And I laid on the table, and the next morning I would come in and all purple was popping off of it. And I go, well, here's another jar of it. I'll try this one and just put it over there. When I made the black come off, where the purple touched the black, it was making the black come off. And I was going, oh, this piece needs 4 pieces in it. I don't know what I'm going to do. No, but fourth one, which I had put, I never fired it, but I put all kinds of underglazes on it to test them out. So I just sanded that all off. See, forgivable. I sanded it all off. And then I thought, well, I'm going to need to make sure it's going to be the same size, even though it came out of the same mold, because it's going to be fired at different times. So I took the one before I fired it, and I went over and measured it with one of these that was already fired, and went, oh no, this one's so much bigger, all around the edges, so maybe 7 millimeters bigger. And so I started sanding, and then I went, no, it shrinks when you fire it. That's why they're smaller, because they all came from the same mold. So I almost like messed that up. So I fired it and started all over new, and I was able to find another piece because I was running out of time. Because in the winter, I don't really like to work in my studio because it takes so long for wet clay to dry in the winter. And here's where making mud pies comes in. I can take in the summer and go out and put it for just so long in the sun and then bring it back in and work on it some more, like you do mud pies. And it goes really fast that way. Uh-huh. I've heard I've heard that before. My art history classroom is right across from the dean's office, and we have classroom door open and his office open, and I'd walk out of class and say, what were you doing in there? Because I'd say something, and I would say something, and a student would go, is that going to be on the test? And I go, what do you think? I would go, true or false? Did you walk to school or carry your lunch? And then I would throw a true and false question in among their other true and false questions. And it's like, oh. um, if you ask them who's buried in Grant's tomb or Salvador Dali's tomb, they go, I don't know. And I was like going, it's the old Grant's tomb thing. They fall for it every time. But it's Salvador Dali. Anyway, we'll walk around, get you a glass of wine, and if you really need me to talk about something or you want to ask me a question, I'll be here. Okay, thank you for coming.